Up next, halfway around the world, tweets are launched like grenades in a 21st century fight for freedom.
Twitter became a double-edged sword. It was something that was used by activists, but it was also used by the regime in their crackdown.
Rebellion, rage, and arrests coming up on the Twitter revolution. When the spark of rebellion is lit, the fire can spread faster with Twitter. Whether it's through widespread demonstrations in Brazil or civil unrest in Turkey, Twitter's influence is felt across the globe. During the Arab Spring in 2011, millions of protesters demanded the overthrow of repressive regimes, taking the fight to the streets and to social media sites, including Twitter.
All it takes is about 15 seconds for me to write out a tweet, "We're being attacked with tear gas."
It was during the Arab Spring that Miriam Al-Khawaja, a young activist in the country of Bahrain, first discovered the power of Twitter.
One of the things that really amazed me was the amount of followers that I got from that one tweet. And I remember I just started getting emails, you have new followers, you have new followers. And I realized what an important tool this was to use to reach out to people way beyond the borders of Bahrain.
We went to Bahrain. The small island nation in the Persian Gulf has embraced modern life while holding on to centuries-old tradition. It is ruled by a self-proclaimed king and his uncle, a prime minister who's been in power for more than 40 years. They crushed the uprisings in Bahrain during the Arab Spring, but that's only driven Al-Khawaja to launch a media campaign worldwide.
We're looking at a situation where people do not have basic liberties and freedoms and rights that they should have as human beings.
She was born into a family of prominent human rights activists. Her father has been beaten by the police and is serving a life sentence for his long-standing opposition to the ruling family. Her sister is a political prisoner as well. To avoid arrest, Al-Khawaja lives in exile in Denmark and travels often.
So, well, very nice to meet you. I feel like I know you from Twitter.
Yes, definitely. You've been doing a great job at tweeting about Bahrain.
She's looking for allies and pressing for democratic reforms in her country.
Almost 50% of the Bahraini population took to the streets to demand change.
Just 26 years old, she has become the voice of the movement, and Twitter is her megaphone.
Twitter in a lot of different countries as a means of fun or entertainment, where you talk about pop stars or what you had for lunch that day. In the Middle East and North Africa region, it's to some extent become an issue of life and death.
As someone who grew up with an activist background and saw what it was like without Twitter and now with Twitter, is it easier to do your work now?
I watched my father when I was a kid traveling around the world, reaching out to people, talking about the human rights situation in Bahrain. When he wanted to get information out, it would either have to be through releasing information directly to the person or to the organization that he needed to connect to. All I do is tweet out a report and it reaches thousands of people at the same time. And so it's made my job a lot easier.
Al-Khawaja documents human rights violations on Twitter. She asks her followers to send her details of what they see on the ground. And her prolific tweets have raised her international profile. But not everybody is receptive to Twitter's radical brand of free speech. In Turkey, the Prime Minister called Twitter a menace. In Saudi Arabia, the religious police said Twitter users risk losing their afterlives. And now, repressive regimes have gone one step further, locking up citizens for their tweets. In the dark of night, the Bahraini State Police came to this home to arrest Mahdi Al-Basri, a young man just beginning his career as a lawyer. The charge? Insulting the king on Twitter. His family is baffled.
Putting someone like Mahdi in prison for an entire year for a supposed tweet is the worst type of injustice to him and to his family.
Basri appealed his conviction and lost. The Bahraini government acknowledges the Twitter arrests and makes no apologies. Their spokesperson, Salman al-Jalama, told us free speech ends where violence begins.
When you use your 140 characters to incite violence, to encourage people to come out and to engage in disobedience, whether it is by blocking roads or burning tires or inviting them to engage in illegal protests, this is definitely a breach of the law. So when you call for these kind of protests using Twitter, you should be held accountable.
These arrests are an attempt to intimidate Twitter users and silence their voice.
Ali Al-Hayeki, a recent college graduate, was locked up for 4 months in prison after arguing with government loyalists on Twitter.
I just expressed my opinion. Why would I be put in jail for 4 months for that?
I'm personally always inspired to see activists using Twitter to be able to express what's going on and to bear witness to events.
Katie Jacob-Stanton is Twitter's chief ambassador. She helps the company develop new markets overseas. 70% of its users are from outside the U.S., tweeting in 35 languages.
Your goal is to get Twitter in the hands of as many people as you can. And there are going to be state forces that don't want that to happen.
It is hard. I mean, in some markets like Syria and Cuba and China, Iran, where the governments control access to telecommunications, for example, it's very difficult for Twitter to be able to run a normal operation. But information's like water, and it has its way of finding its way out of places.
What do you think Twitter's true involvement in the Arab Spring was? Would it have happened without Twitter?
It wasn't Twitter, it wasn't any social media that caused any of these revolutions. Revolutions are caused by people. But the difference that I think Twitter made is that I think it allows information to spread quickly.
Twitter is a huge threat to the government today. It scares them that they're not in full control of who can say what and when. When you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people online tweeting things, you cannot go after all of them.
Social media alone cannot overthrow a government or depose a king. But in the fierce media war waged between those in power and those who are desperate for it, Twitter has become vital, a weapon of mass communication, controlled by everyone and no one. I'm Carl Quintanilla. Thanks for watching.